L'chaim, l'chaim. Tonight, or whenever you're going to see the video, maybe tomorrow, is the yahrzeit, the passing of the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe revealed to us the greatest revelation of Jewish mysticism. Of course, his teachings were firmly based on everything that came before, particularly the Baal Shem Tov. However, he was the one who really took these ideas and for the first time in human history brought them in a logical way so the average person like me and you, or at least I know I'm pretty average, I don't know about you, but the average person could benefit. So first of all, we know the Alter Rebbe teaches us in Tanya, his magnum opus, the Bible of Jewish mysticism, that on the day of a passing, what actually occurs is everything that the tzaddik, everything that the righteous person stood for and worked on becomes manifest, and the kind of everything is really energy. This is really one of the great teachings of the Alter Rebbe. Quantum physics has discovered this. E equals mc squared, everything is energy. But of course, there's different types of energy, different frequencies. And so the frequency of the great tzaddik, what he brought to the world, the great wisdom and the love for one another, for God, that he manifested, so this becomes manifest in the world today. In fact, the Baal Shem Tov says that when you're with a tzaddik in the vicinity of a holy person, your thought process increases. There was a young woman that came to town. She was a very righteous woman. I could see while she was just here in the city, my thought process was holier. So the bottom line is that, first of all, we want to bless the Alter Rebbe. Being here on earth is a great privilege. There are things that we can do that souls in heaven can't do. And that's because we're in what's called Olam Asiyah, the physical world. And when God would tell a prophet to do something, or a prophecy even, and many people don't know this, but the Rebbe said this, the Rebbe would stand every Sunday and give out $1 bill and a blessing. Why was he giving out $1 bill? So the reason was because he was attaching his blessing to something physical. So the God would tell the prophet to do something physical, tap on the table. I don't know what exactly he would tell them to do. But the point is that the physical world, it's like, imagine for a moment you have a rope. The rope may be in heaven, but if you're down here on earth and you pull it, you bring heaven down to earth. And you can only bring heaven down to earth if you are actually on earth. And so we have a great opportunity. We're very, very important in the cosmic reality, because when you're in heaven, you may know 1,000, 1,000,000 times more than you know on earth. But when you're on earth, you can manifest all of that right here. So first of all, I say l'chaim, a blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyah b'dvari. I say l'chaim, a blessing to the Alter Rebbe. And I'm just mirroring something that Rebbe said, so it's okay that you should do everything in your power to bring the righteous Mashiach right now. Tonight we should be dancing with you in the holy Beis HaMikdash. The Alter Rebbe, if he could talk to us today, this is what I believe he would say. You know, I have a nephew, Mendel. That's enough. You won't guess who that is. So Mendel said, you know, if the Rebbe had to teach us something today, what would he say? And he said, he'd say exactly what he said all the days he was on this planet. The Rebbe would say, bring Mashiach now. That's what he would say, because that's what he said for 45, or well, at least 42 years or so of him being the Rebbe speaking to us. And that's really his message, bring Mashiach now, through increasing goodness and kindness and Torah mitzvahs. Obviously, it gets a little deeper, but that's the core. So what would the Alter Rebbe tell us today? Now, a lot of people mistake, and some people won't like what I'm going to say, but thank God I'm not too shy. A lot of people actually don't understand the Alter Rebbe. They mistake the Alter Rebbe. They mistake the Rebbe as well. And in order to explain what a Rebbe is, we have to bring a story of when the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Chabad Rebbe, passed away. And I have a line, if I may quote myself. It takes a Rebbe to know a Rebbe. After the Rebbe Rashab passed away, somebody was praising him. He was so smart. He was so kind. He was this. He was that. So his son, who became the next Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak, said a very profound thing. He said, everything you're saying is true, but you don't understand what a Rebbe is. He says a Rebbe is infinite. So because he's infinite, he also contains all these qualities. In other words, when we look at a reality, we're looking at this reality from a finite perspective. So I look at, say, somebody, and I say, well, that person, he's so smart. Or that lady, she's so sweet. Or she's such a good mother. Or this child is so, I don't know, kind. Whatever. We're looking from the brain, in fact, is only capable of taking in basically data, taking in specific amounts of information. And so you can look at something and compare and say, wow, that person has this quality, that quality. But infinity is the lack of anything that is lacking. It's what's called in Kabbalah the perfection of everything. So any potential good quality is in infinity. And so to actually understand what the Alter Rebbe was, and this really began with the Chabad Rebbes, they were souls coming directly from Hashem. It was straight godliness, as the Maggid said, that it's amazing that the great God could fit into such a small body. In other words, we all have a soul. We all begin in God. However, our soul goes through the different stages. Atzilus, Bria, Yetzirah, Asiyah. It becomes more self-identified. I once had a radio show, and I discussed about the Rebbe. And one of the main points that I said was that the Rebbe was a window to God. Why? Because his body, unlike us where the soul comes into the body, there becomes this tension between the two. The Rebbe's soul, there's no tension. In fact, the Rebbe says something amazing. Now remember, the Rebbe was talking about the other Rebbes, but obviously it applies to him as well. That the body of a Rebbe is not a real body. It's like a human body. And in fact, I heard this from Rabbi Groner, who was with the Rebbe the last, unfortunately, year or close to 2 years of his life. He was first at home. They had like a kind of a semi-hospital. Then, unfortunately, for about 4 or 5 months, he was in an ICU ward. So the doctor that was treating him, or the doctor said that you can rewrite the medical books because his body would do things exactly opposite to the normal human body. Sometimes they would give medicines exactly opposite that they would give a normal human body. It was not a normal human body. And his soul was not a normal human soul. It was, and this is the main point that I'm trying to bring out, the quality of infinity is that it lacks no lack. It has nothing that it's missing. And this is very, very critical to understand. Because what the Alter Rebbe, and if you look, certainly in the Rebbe's teachings you find this, but if you look, you don't see it so much in the Tanya. The Tanya, in my humble opinion, again, many people won't like what I'm saying, and I've written 4 or 5 books on the Tanya, so I'm saying this with the greatest respect for the Tanya. I think the Tanya is almost the beginner's guide. We do know that the Alter Rebbe wrote another book called Sefer Shel Tzadikim, the Book of Tzadikim. He felt the world wasn't ready for it, and he burnt the book. A great Rebbe said that I'm actually going to go up in that fire. I think he passed away that year. But the point is, and this is a very fundamental point, you see this very often in Likutei Torah, apart from the magnum opus of the Alter Rebbe, which is the Tanya. Of course, he has the Shulchan Aruch, which is amazing work, but he also has the Likutei Torah and Torah Or, which is also kind of the foundation of Chassidus. Very often he speaks about a concept, which is that the ultimate goal, and really the Alter Rebbe was the one who revealed this. He revealed the ultimate goal of life itself. And that is very simple, what we call Dira B'Tachtonim. Dira B'Tachtonim is a very strange concept. What does that mean? God wanted to dwell below. Well, the Rebbe defines that concept, and really the Alter Rebbe is the first one that goes into it. And so what I'm saying is smack from the Alter Rebbe, it's from the Rebbe. Some people that are not that spiritual won't resonate with it. Others that are will resonate with it. As Einstein said, there's kind of, if you want to call it a scientific, a logical mind that's stuck in logic. There's a religious mind that also has not only logic, but it has religious ethical beliefs. And then there's the spiritual mind that has experience with another realm. And he said, unless you have experience with this, and he was a very spiritual person, that's why he spoke about it, he says, you don't even know what you're talking about. And so that's fine. I get that. The ultimate goal of God, which he foresaw everything before he made it, was this goal, which is that he loves you. He gives you freedom. The example that I give is like a parent. If a parent loves a child, he does two things. Number one, a mother as well, obviously. Number one, they give the child freedom. They give the child everything, really. But everything is to give that child the space to be themselves. And yet they're always there and happily there to guide the child. So they subtly guide the child, but ultimately they want the child to make good choices. So the child has their own, what we call nachas, self-satisfaction from their own growth. So therefore, God also gives us, obviously, freedom of choice. That's the basics. That's why we're here on this planet. But it's not so we should run around wild and do stupid things. Freedom of choice is there in order for us to take the advice of God. In other words, we should freely choose to realize how stupid we are without God, how our instincts are foolish at best and evil at worst, and how life can be a meaningless exercise. But when we invite God, and God actually, and this is something from the Alter Rebbe, God works as a reaction. To the extent that you seek God, it's like lightning. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but the energy comes below and they meet smack in the center. To the extent that you seek divinity is the extent that divinity connects to you. And so it's actually particularly, and he says this very clearly, the Baal Tshuva, the person, or maybe this was from the Rebbe, maybe both, I don't remember exactly, but the person who turns to God, God turns to him. As I just studied now, and I suggest you do this, it's very appropriate on the passing of a tzaddik to study something of his work. So I studied a chapter in Tanya, and the Alter Rebbe says, and he says this many times, God is everywhere. Nothing has changed for God. The world doesn't change anything. It's like in this kind of, I don't know, let's say you're thinking about a pink elephant. Where's the pink elephant? Does it change anything? It's in your head. It doesn't change anything. So if you're close to God or away from God, it's not a physical thing. God is everywhere and is even your very being. However, when you turn away from someone, it's the most distant you can get. And when you're towards someone, it's the closest you can get. And so it's not a question of space. We're all within God's space. It's a question of direction. As long as you're seeking and connecting to God, God is connecting to you. I mean, he's always there like a parent. However, he's giving you the space. But when you say, I want you in my space, come to my space, he says, I want to be with you, but I'm not going to overtake you. I'm not going to take away your mind. I'm not going to take away your freedom. I'm just going to be there as your friend to guide you. And so something that changed my life, and I have to credit Rabbi Tzvi Freeman for bringing this to my attention, it's from the Rebbe, that if you need to get God's advice, and there was a time in my life that, let's call it, I was highly unsuccessful. Just as many people are in the West, I wasn't poor, I wasn't hungry, I was aimless and meaningless. I realized life didn't have any, I'm not saying I was depressed, it just didn't feel like there was anything happening. And I read this from Rabbi Freeman, that he brings down from the Rebbe in 365 Meditations, that if you don't know what to do, ask God. And the first thought is God's reply. That changed my life. And I've told this to many people, and it's changed theirs, and it's going to change yours. Because suddenly you enter into a relationship with a being that has your best interest in mind. And you can try this. There's no question about it. Many times you're going to feel fear and you're not going to listen. But you'll always see that it was right. When you listen, it's good. When you don't listen, it's bad. That's the sign. It's like, what is science? You boil it at a certain temperature, it boils. The results prove the experiment. And so this is a gateway to allowing God into our lives. And so I want to conclude with three things that I believe the Alter Rebbe would tell us, because it's actually very simple, basic facts. But sometimes simple, basic facts are everything that we need. The first is the premise of reality, which is that we are infinitely valuable. We are the choice of God, and that will never change. Just as God is infinite and forever, so too are we, because we are his choice, and his choice, like him, is infinite and forever. And ultimately, what is a person? A person is consciousness. Your consciousness, your knowledge of self, and your self-awareness, and your awareness of that which is outside of you, your emotional capacity and your intellectual capacity is forever. You will forever, ever, ever exist. You will never, ever die. You cannot die. As we know, energy itself doesn't die. You can go to heaven, but you're going to be conscious. God forbid you can go to hell, but you're going to be conscious. And soon Mashiach will come. You'll be conscious. The fact of who we are, which is conscious beings existing in a universe which is a time-space dimension, will never change. Will never, ever change. The time-space dimension may be upgraded. You might go to heaven. Time might seem quicker. The space might seem different. But the basic idea that there's a consciousness, an awareness of self and other within a time-space dimension will never change. The information may get upgraded, but it will never change. Number two, God will always be there for you. He will never, ever, ever let go of you. This is my joke. It's based on another joke. What's the difference between God and a bulldog? Is that eventually the bulldog lets go. God loves you too much to let go of you. He will never let go of you. I have a friend, Pinchas Silberman, who's genius, an epic genius, and somebody who came to God later in his life. And he said, this is a train you can get on, but you can never get off. And anybody who's gotten into the godly experience knows that. God is with you. As a friend of mine, Peter Geen, unfortunately passed away too young, he said, and he became religious and he left, came back. He said, I left God, but God never left me. And I can say that. And that's actually, as you can tell, thank God my self-esteem is good. And where does that come from? It comes from my relationship with God. Because no matter what, I know that there is a being that loves me unconditionally. How do I know that? Because he's always there for me. What is the definition of love? This is, if I can quote myself again, my line. Love is caring. Somebody that says, I love you, maybe they need you. But somebody that's there for you, they don't say, I love you, but they're always there for you. They love you. God is always there for us. He always was and he always will be. His love and his guidance is forever and for eternity. And then this is the last thing, the final thing. And that is that we are ultimately growers. Ki Adam Eitz Hasada, man is a tree of the field. You and I, whether you like it or not, and this is how you know something is true, because it doesn't, it doesn't say, do you want to identify this way? Do you want to think this? It is the reality. Like at 220 Fahrenheit, water boils. Whether you identify with that or not, that's when it boils. It's reality, right? There are billions of things that happen. They're reality. And the thing that happens to us, and it's happened to you, and it will always happen to you, it's just a question of in what stage of this exercise are you, is ki Adam Eitz Hasada, man is a tree of the field. Our consciousness, born into this reality, in which we are fundamentally a combination of divinity, a divine soul, that's our altruism and our heart and our compassion, and also a body with ego that wants it to get its way. Would you like to get your way? Would like to get its way, and sometimes can be delusional. I expect to get my way. That combination, that person will always be. It's just a question of how much you advance beyond your innate narcissism, innate selfishness. And the beauty of this is that we can infinitely advance. And this is so hard to understand. It's so hard for a human being to wrap their head around. I will infinitely advance. Our minds, you see, I compare the mind to food. Why? What happens when you feed yourself? Suddenly, you're full. When you're full, do you think about, oh, I'm hungry? Do you think about other people are hungry? Not really. You just feel full. But yet every single day you get hungry. Every single day you have to eat again. And the same thing is with the mind. When the mind has ideas that it believes is true, it's full. It doesn't need anything else. It's full. It's only when we realize that this isn't working for me that we say, I need a new idea. But what if the mind is getting ideas? You see, we think that we ate something. What if the food ate us? What if the idea dripped from a super brain into our brain? And that's exactly what happens. There's an infinite wisdom from God, and the ideas drip in. And therefore, there's a famous story. Once Yosef Karo was working an entire night on understanding a deep halachic concept. He was a great mind. He wrote the Shulchan Aruch, many books. And he comes in the morning, and there's some youngster studying, and he says exactly what he said. Took him a whole night to figure out. So Rabbi Yosef Karo, in fact, had an angel that used to teach him Torah. And in fact, the Alter Rebbe says, this is Dira B'Tachsenim, exactly what I said before, the voice of God coming, whether it's through an angel, however that voice comes. And the angel told him, no, you brought that idea into the world. Once it was here, the other person accessed it. So listen carefully to what I'm saying. There are infinite ideas. Just as you can imagine technology always increasing. Sometimes people think, I remember this interesting kid, he told me, oh yeah, we reached the pinnacle of technology. Well, my wife says that we haven't begun technology. Very clever woman. She says that the infinite future, because technology is built on technology. The faster computers go, the more we get into deeper and deeper algorithms and ideas. So these things are only going to increase. We have no idea what's coming. I spoke to a guy. He went to, people pay $80,000 a weekend to go hear these billionaires talk. These are like the cutting edge people that are kind of have the companies inventing these things. He said that within 10, 15 years, you'll be able to imagine yourself somewhere and get there. I'm not saying this is true, but the point is that the technology, we know that even the army is about 10 years ahead of us in technology. The technology is infinite. And the reason I bring that down is there's another kind of technology, and this is super critical to understand, and that's called spiritual technology. Spiritual technology is Chassidus. It's wisdom, really what the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe began to reveal. It's wisdom from God. It's like a new insight, but it's not just something related to the reality as you know it. It's something that transforms you. It's like, wow, that's amazing. Like, I'll give you an example. Today, I had this insight, which I shared with you. Quite a simple but amazing insight. As God is infinite, his choice is infinite. That says to me, wow, that means his choice in me existing is infinite. I'm infinite. That's an amazing realization. It's not that I maybe didn't have that idea before, but I didn't realize that idea. It didn't impact me before. It impacted me, and maybe it's impacting you. The point of the matter is, there are, I don't know, probably at least 100 million spiritual people in the world as we speak that are getting new insights. And these insights become accessible to the whole world. And this is what it says, that when Mashiach comes, nobody will need to teach one another, for all will know me, will have a direct relationship with God. But at the same time, it says everybody will learn from one another. Why? Because the godliness that will come to each person will get connected to the other person as well. So we are at the cusp of an infinite era. Everything that existed till now existed within a finite dimension. Even religion. the perception of religion was still limited. Okay, God came and he gave us this and this, but that's it. That's what it is. Check these boxes, you go to heaven. And it might be true. I'm not saying that it's not true. It is true. However, that's not the infinite goal. The infinite goal of God boils down to the three things that we just said. Number one, you. God made the world because he foresaw and loves you. And you're going to exist forever. So get comfortable in your own skin. The second thing is that God is your ultimate lover, and he will never, ever, ever let go of you. He will love you eternally and forever. Just as you can imagine somebody like a parent to a child. No matter what the child does, the parent will be with that child forever, because the love, the bond, maybe the child doesn't realize they come from the parent, but the parent knows the child comes from me. And number three, what will God be doing with you? And what should you be doing with your life? That is like a tree. The tree, I heard this from my father. He was a great lecturer. He's written over 30 books, mainly translated. Jewish mysticism. He says the tree every year grows another ring. Must grow. And I didn't know this until he said it. If you cut the outer layer, the outer ring, the tree begins to die. So my friends, if you want to live, you must learn. Not only must you learn, the Baal Shem Tov says there are two types of Torah. There's the Torah of the mind and the Torah of the heart. He said, I came to reveal the Torah of the heart. You must not only learn with your head. I met somebody yesterday, special guy, and he was bragging a little bit in a nice way. He says, I learned the whole Shas. He went through could take you 7 years to go through all these volumes. I said, tell me, main thing, are you a good person? You give charity? To me, somebody says I learned through the whole Shas. It means nothing to me. Somebody says, I helped another human being? Everything. It means everything to me. So the point of the matter is that the heart can always grow. It can grow in its love. It can grow in its understanding of our own delusions, of our own grandeur, which is actually even subconscious. It could grow in its respect for others. You know, the world today is really, there are many groups and communities, etc. But certainly the people who call themselves progressive and they think they're smart, they don't realize that I call it regressive. Basically, it's communism. And any idea that says my way or the highway, that's evil. That's where holy wars came from. Our goal is not to say we're all the same. Our goal is to say we're all unique. God made each and every one of us as an individual with special talents and abilities. He's connecting to us all. He's allowing every tree is unique. Doesn't want to be the same. Who wants to be the same? Who wants to be special? It has its own gift to the world. And the oxygen, the spirituality, that more enlightenment that we breathe becomes light to the world. And so I want to bless you this very night. And that is that we should understand that we are infinite, that we are infinitely loved. But what does that mean to be infinitely loved? It's not to give you what you want. True love doesn't give you what you want. True love gives you what's good for you. And ultimately, there's only one thing, only one that's truly good for you, for me, and for everyone. And that is to become like a wave, to be able to learn, integrate, learn, integrate. Keep that flow going. Learn, integrate, learn, integrate. In fact, that's why the Rebbe says we have to go to sleep at night. Why does God make it? We waste 22 years of our lives. That's a lot of time sleeping. Why? Because every day has to be new. Every moment you can learn something new. And I'm going to conclude with the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, because this is really a great way. It really transformed my life in learning how to learn new things all the time. Baal Shem Tov says that every single thing you see and hear is a lesson from God. This is true. It's a real thing. I spent 2 weeks. I was obsessed with this idea for 2 weeks. And I was just looking at everything. What can I learn? But then what happened was something amazing. It went to the back of my head. And now, automatically, I live a normal life. But automatically, whenever I see anything, especially a little bit out of the ordinary, my brain already learned something from it. It's almost automatic. I'm learning from life all the time. And I want to say this, and I'm not saying this to brag in any way, shape, or form. I'm saying this because maybe it can help you. It's the most amazing life. I have a great life. Do you know why? Even though there's this pandemic and all, but I'm learning all the time. There's a part of me that's living in the real world, if you want to call it that, the 5-dimensional world. But there's a part of me that is always learning. And that part will always exist. And I love that part of me because I get to learn new things. I would say, and again, not to brag at all, never said this, I've never really even thought about this, but I'm saying this just because it comes up in conversation and maybe it can help someone. I would imagine I probably learn new, very conservative estimate. I learn at least 15 new things a day. In fact, I often blog 15 things. I remember when I started my blog, I thought, how many things can you write? I've written over 70,000 blogs. And again, I don't say that with ego. You can see that I'm not saying that with ego. How does a human being come up with 70,000 blogs? And I'm sure that in the future I'll do it. And I have no idea where it's going to come from. But the point is that God is infinite. And He's just dripping. If you just open your eyes to learning more, it will just come to you. It'll come to you in, you go outside and you see, you see a albino raccoon or something. Okay, what can you learn from that? So I can't learn anything right now, but I'm saying something that's different. It can spark something that you can learn. It can teach you something. And so, my friends, you only have two choices in life. You can join infinity, or you can die in the finite. Because the finite is finite. It does end. The infinite never ends. So please, if the Alter Rebbe was here right now, I think he would tell us, join infinity. Take this infinite time that has come to the world after thousands of years of all these mitzvahs. He speaks about this, that the mitzvahs, they piped in God. It didn't just happen. We didn't just come to the Messianic era. It was the result and culmination of thousands of years and millions of Jews keeping Torah, mitzvahs. Every mitzvah brings godliness into the world. And right now, God is right here in the world. He's come home. He's home. And when He's here, He doesn't destroy reality. He made it. He loves you. The parent doesn't destroy the reality. The parent is there for you. He's there to help each and every one of us. And this is going to be the infinite reality. Now, of course, the Mashiach will come and there'll be great miracles. But ultimately, who are we? We're consciousness. That's not going to change. What does the consciousness do? It learns. It grows. That's not going to change. So these three things are forever. God, consciousness, and growth. I love you. Try to do this wisdom. Try to begin to learn from everything you see. Maybe some of the other things that I've said you can inculcate. And remember this. When you learn something new, share it with someone else. Teach someone else. Because we're all actually Rebbes. The Rebbe said we are all, because the divine wisdom is now given to us, we're all, if you want to call it prophets, we're all people that are getting new insights, new inspiration, and the world is desperate for inspiration. Everybody's looking for inspiration. Anybody that's been alive for more than, 10 years is looking for inspiration. So go inspire the world. It will make you feel like you matter. And what could be better than that? It will make you connected to other people. So let's all do that. There's no reason not to do it. And I'm going to give you one last tip. If you don't believe that you have the capacity, just take a pen and paper and start writing and see what comes out.